The Selection, Chapter 15. Dinner was disappointing. Next week I'd have to tell my mates to leave some room in the dress for me to eat. In my room, Annie, Mary, and Lucy waited to help me out of my gown, but I explained that I'd need to stay in a little bit longer. Annie figured it out first that Maxon was coming to see me because I was always eager to get out of the binding clothes. Would you like us to stay later tonight? It's no problem, Mary said just a little too hopefully. After the calamity of Maxon visiting early this week, I decided sending them out as early as possible was the best way to go. Besides, I couldn't bear to have them watching me until he showed up. No, no, I'm fine. If I have a problem with the dress later, I'll ring. They reluctantly backed out the door and left me to wait for Maxon. I didn't know how long he'd be, and I didn't want to start a book and have to stop, or sit down at the piano only to hop right back up. I ended up just lounging on the bed, waiting. I let my mind wander. I thought of Molly and her kindness. I realized that besides a few small details, I knew very little about her. Still, I trusted that her actions towards me were in no way fake. And then I thought of the girls who were all too fake. I wondered if Maxine could tell the difference. It seemed like Maxine's experience with women was so great and so small at once. He was gentlemanly enough, but when he got too close, he came undone. It was like he knew how to treat a lady, he just didn't know how to treat a date. It was quite a contrast to Aspen. Aspen. His name, his face, his memory hit me so quickly it was hard to process. Aspen? What was he doing now? It was getting closer to curfew in Carolina. He'd still be at work if he had a job today. Or maybe out with Brenna, or whoever else he had decided to start spending his time with since we broke up. Part of me ached to know. Part of me wanted to crumble just thinking about it. I looked over to my jar. I picked it up and felt the penny slide around. So lonely. Me too, I whispered. Me too. Was it stupid of me to keep this? I had given back everything else, so why save one little penny? Would this be all I had left? A penny in a jar to show my daughter one day, to tell her about my first boyfriend, the one no one knew about? I didn't have time to dwell on my worries. Maxine's firm knock came only minutes later. I found myself running to the door. I drew it open in a big sweep, and Maxine looked surprised to see me. Where in the world are your maids? He asked, surveying my room. Gone. I sent them off when I came back from dinner. Every day? Yes, of course. I can take my clothes off by myself. Thank you. Maxon raised his eyebrows and smiled. I blushed. I hadn't meant it to come out like that. Grab a wrap. It's chilly outside. He walked down the hall. I was still a little distracted by my thoughts, and I knew by now that Maxon wasn't great with starting conversations. I had looped my hand around his arm almost immediately, though. I was glad that there was a sort of familiarity there. If you insist on keeping your maids around, I'm going to have to post a guard outside your door, he said. No, I don't like being babysat. He chuckled. He'd be outside. You wouldn't even know he was there. I would too, I complained. I'd sense his presence. Maxon made a playfully exhausted sigh. I was so busy arguing. I didn't hear the whispers until they were practically in front of us. Celeste, Amika, and Tina were heading past us towards their room. Ladies, Maxon said, and gave a small head nod. I suppose it was foolish to think no one would see us together. I felt my face heat up, but I wasn't sure why. The girls all curtsied and carried on their way. I looked over my shoulder at them as we went toward the stairs. Amika and Teeny looked curious. Within minutes, they would be telling others about it. I would be cornered tomorrow for sure. Celeste was staring daggers at me. I was sure she thought I had personally wronged her. I turned away and said the first thing that came to mind. I told you the girls who got nerves about the attack would end up staying. I didn't know exactly who I'd asked to leave, but rumors pointed to Teeny as being one. She had fainted. Someone else had said burial, but I knew that was a lie. You'd have to pry the crown out of her cold dead hands first. You can't imagine what a relief that was. He sounded sincere. It took me a moment to think of how to respond, as that wasn't quite what I was expecting, and I was very focused on not falling. I didn't know how to take steps down very well while holding on to someone else. The heels didn't help. At least if I slipped, he would grab me. I would have thought it would be helpful in a way, I said as we made it to the first floor. and I found my footing again. I mean, it has to be complicated to pick one person out of all these girls. If the circumstances weaken some out for you, shouldn't that make it easier? Maxon shrugged. I suppose it should, but it didn't feel that way at all, I assure you. He looked hurt. Good evening, sirs, he greeted the guards, who opened the doors to the garden without the slightest hesitation. Maybe I would have to take Maxon up on that offer to have them know I like to go outside. The idea of being able to escape so easily was appealing. I don't understand, I said as he led me to a bench, our bench, and let me sit facing the lights of the palace. He took a seat with his body facing the opposite direction, so that we were sort of turned in toward each other. It was an easy way to talk. He looked hesitant about sharing, but he took a breath and spoke. Maybe I was just flattering myself, thinking I'd be worth some sort of risk. Not that I'd wish that on anyone, he clarified. I don't mean that. It just, I don't know. Don't you all see everything risking? No. You're here with your family to give you advice, and we all live around your schedule. Everything about your life stays the same, and ours changed overnight. What in the world could you possibly be risking? Maxine looked shocked. America, I might have my family, but imagine how embarrassing it is to have your parents watch as you attempt to date for the first time. And not just your parents, the whole country. Worse than that, it's not even a normal style of dating. And living around my schedules, when I'm not with you all, I'm organizing troops, making laws, perfecting budgets, and all on my own these days. While my father watches me stumble in my own stupidity because I have none of his experience. And then, when I inevitably do things in a way he wouldn't, he goes and corrects my mistakes. And while I'm trying to do all this work, you, the girls, I mean, are all I can't think about. I'm excited and terrified by the lot of you. He was using his hands more than I had ever seen, whipping them in air and running them through his hair. And you think my life isn't changing? What do you think what do you think my chances might be of finding a soulmate in the group of you? I'll be lucky if I can just find someone who will be able to stand me for the rest of our lives. What if I've already sent her home because I was relying on some sort of spark I didn't feel? What if she's waiting to leave me at the first sign of adversity? What if I don't find anyone at all? What do I do then, America? His speech had started out angered and impassioned, but by the end his questions weren't rhetorical anymore. He really wanted to know. What was he going to do if no one here was even close to being someone he could love? Though that didn't even seem to be his main concern. He was more worried that no one would love him. Actually, Maxon, I think you will find your soulmate here, honestly. Really? His voice charged with hope at my prediction. Absolutely. I put a hand on his shoulder. He seemed to be comforted by the touch alone. I wondered how often people simply touched him. If your life is as upside down as you say it is, then she has to be here somewhere. In my experience, true love is usually the most convenient kind. I smiled weakly. He seemed happy to hear those words, and they consoled me as well, because I believed them. And if I couldn't have love of my own, the best I could do was help Maxine find it himself. I hope you and Mali hit it off. She's incredibly sweet. Maxine made a strange face. She seems so. What? Is something wrong with sweet? No, no, sweet is good. He didn't elaborate. What do you keep looking for? He asked suddenly. What? You can't seem to keep your eyes in one place. I can tell that you're paying attention, but you seem to be looking for something. I realized he was right, although, all through his little speech, I'd scanned the garden and the windows, and even the towers along the walls. I was getting paranoid. People, cameras? I shook my head as I looked into the night. We're alone. There's just the guard by the door. Maxim pointed to the lone figure in the palace lamplight. He was right. No one had followed us out, and the windows were all lit up but vacant. I'd see that already, though my scanning, but it helped to have it confirmed. I felt my posture relax a little. You don't like people watching you, do you? He asked. Not really. I prefer being below the radar. That's what I'm used to, you know. I traced the patterns carving into the perfect block of stone beneath me, not meeting his eyes. You'll have to adjust to that. When you leave here, eyes will be on you for the rest of your life. My mom still talks to some of the women she was with when she went through the selection. They're all viewed as important women. Still. Great, I moaned. Just one more thing I can't wait to go home to. Maxon's face was apologetic, but I had to look away. I was freshly reminded of how much this stupid competition was costing me, how my idea of normal was never coming back. It didn't seem fair, but I checked myself again. I shouldn't take it out on Maxon. He was as much a victim in this as the rest of us, though in a very different way. I sighed and looked back to him. I saw his face set as he decided something. America, could I ask you something personal? Maybe, I hedged. He gave me a humorless smile. It's just, well, I can tell that you really don't like it here. You hate the rules and the competition and the attention and the clothes and the. Well, no, you like the food. He smiled. I did too. You miss your home and your family, and I suspect other people very, very much. Your feelings are incredibly close to the surface. Yeah, I roll my eyes. I know. But you're willing to be homesick and miserable here instead of going home. Why? I felt the lump rise in my throat, and I pushed it back down. I'm not miserable. And you know why? Well, sometimes you seem okay. I see you smiling when you talk to some of the other girls, and you seem very content at meals. I'll give you that, but other times you just look so sad. Would you tell me why? The whole story? It's just another failed love story. It's nothing big or exciting. Trust me. Please don't push me. I don't want to cry. For better or for worse, I'd like to know one true love story beside my parents. One that was outside the walls and the rules and the structure. Please. The truth was, I'd carried this secret for so long. I couldn't imagine putting it into words, and it hurt so much to think of Aspen. I could even say his name out loud. I took a deep breath. Maxon was my friend now. He tried so hard to be nice to me, and he had been so honest with me. In the world out there, I pointed past the walls. The castes take care of one another. Sometimes, like my father has three families who buy at least one painting every year, and I have families that always pick me to sing at their Christmas parties. They are our patrons. See? Well, we were sort of patrons to his family. They are sixes. When we could afford to have someone help clean or if we needed help with inventory, we always called his mother. I knew him when we were kids, but he was older than me, closer to my brother's age. They always played rough, so I avoided them. My older brother Kota, he's an artist like my dad. A few years back, this one metal sculpture piece that he had been working on for years sold for a massive amount of money. You may have heard him. Maxon mouthed the word Kota Singer. The seconds passed and I saw the connection click in his brain. I brushed my hair off my shoulders and braced myself. We were really excited for Kota. He had worked really hard on that piece, and we needed that money so badly at the time. The whole family was elated, but Kota kept almost all the money for himself. That one sculpture catapulate, cat, catapulted him. People started calling for his work every day. Now he has a waiting list a mile long and charges through the roof because he can. I think he might be a little addicted to the fame. Fives rarely get that kind of notice. Our eyes met in a very significant moment, and I thought again of how I was past ever going to unnoticed again, whether I wanted to be or not. Anyway, after the calls started coming, Kota decided to detach himself from the family. My older sister had just gotten married, so we lost her income. Then Kota starts making real money, and he up and leaves us. I put my hands on Maxon's chest to emphasize my point. You don't do that. You don't just leave your family. Sticking together, it's the only way to survive. I saw the understanding in Maxon's eyes. He kept it all for himself, trying to buy his way up. I nodded. He's got his heart set on being a two. If he was happy being a three or a four, he could have bought that title and helped us. But he's obsessed. It's stupid, really. He lives more than comfortably, but it's that damned label he wants. He won't stop until he gets it. Maxon shook his head. That could take a lifetime. As long as he dies with a two on his gravestone, I guess he doesn't care. I take it you're not close anymore. I sighed. Not now. But at first I thought that I'd just misunderstood something. I thought that Kota was moving out to be independent, not to separate himself from us. In the beginning, I was on his side. When Kota got his apartment and studio set up, I went to help him. And he called the same family of sixes we always did, and the eldest son was available and eager and worked with Kota for a few days, helping set things up. I paused, remembering. So there I was, just pulling things out of the boxes, and there he was. Our eyes met, and he didn't seem so old or rough anymore. It had been a while since we had seen each other, you know. We weren't kids anymore. The whole day I was there, we would accidentally touch each other as we moved things around. He would look at me or smile, and I felt like I was really alive for the first time. I just. I was crazy about him. My voice finally broke, and some of the tears I'd been longing to shed came out. We lived pretty close to each other, so I'd take walks during the day just in case I might get to see him. Whenever his mother came by to help, sometimes he'd show up too, and we'd just watch each other. That's all we could do. I let out a tiny sob. He's a six, and I'm a five, and there are laws. And my mother, oh, she would have been furious. No one could know. I was moving my hands a little spastically, the stress of all the secret keeping coming to the surface. Soon there were little anonymous notes left taped to my window telling me I was beautiful or that I sang like an angel. And I knew they were from him. The night of my 15th birthday, my mom threw a party and his family was invited. He cornered me and gave me my birthday card and told me to read it when I was alone. When I finally got to it, it didn't have his name or even a happy birthday on the inside. It just said Treehouse Midnight. Maxon's eyes widened. Midnight? But you should know that I break Elia curfew regularly. You could have landed yourself in jail, America. He shook his head. I shrugged. Back then, it seemed inconsequential. That first time, I felt like I was flying. Here he was, figuring out a way for us to be alone together. I just couldn't believe he wanted to be alone with me. That night, I waited up in my room and watched the treehouse in my backyard. Near midnight, I saw someone climb up. I remember I actually went to brush my teeth again, just in case. I crept out my window and up the tree. And he was there. I couldn't believe it. And I don't remember how it started, but soon we were confessing how we felt about each other. And we couldn't stop laughing because we were so happy. The other one felt the same way. And I just couldn't be bothered to worry about breaking curfew or lying to my parents. And I didn't care that I was a 5 and he was 6. I didn't worry about the future because nothing could matter as much as him loving me. And he did, Maxon. He did. More tears, I clutched my chest, feeling Aspen's absence like I never had. Saying it out loud only made it more real. There was nothing to do but finish the story. We dated in secret for 2 years. We were happy, but he was always worried about us sneaking around and how he couldn't give me what he thought I deserved. When we got the notice about the selection, he insisted that I sign up. Maxon's mouth dropped open. I know, it was so stupid, but it would have hung over him forever if I didn't try. And I honestly thought that I would never get chosen. How could I? I raised my hands in the air and let them fall. I was still baffled by it all. I found from his mom that he had been saving up to marry some mystery girl. I was so excited. I made him a little surprise dinner, thinking I could coax the proposal out of him. I was so ready. But when he saw all the money that I'd spent on him, it upset him. He is very proud. He wanted to spoil me, not the other way around, and I guess he saw then that he had never be able to, so he broke up with me instead. 1 week later, my name got called. I heard Maxon whisper something in unintelligible. The last time I saw him was at my send off. I choked. He was with another girl. What? Maxine shouted. I buried my head in my hands. The thing is, it drives me crazy because I know the other girl are after him. They always were, and now he has no reason to turn them down. Maybe he's even with the girl from my send off. I don't know, and I can't do anything about that. But the thought of going home and watching it, I just can't, Maxine. I wept and wept, and Maxine didn't rush me. When the tears finally started to slow, I spoke. Maxine, I hope you find someone you can't live without. I really do. And I hope you never have to know what it's like to have to try and live without them. Maxine's face was a shallow echo of own pain. He looked absolutely broken hearted for me. More than that, he looked angry. I'm sorry, America, I don't. His face shifted a little. Is this a good time to pat your shoulder? His uncertainty made me smile. Yes, now would be a great time. He seemed as skeptical as he had been the other day, but instead of just patting my shoulder, he leaned in and tentatively wrapped his arms around me. I only really ever hug my mother. Is this okay? He asked. I laughed. It's hard to get a hug around. After a minute, I spoke again. I know what you mean, though. I don't really hug anyone besides my family. I felt so drained after the long day of dressing and the report and the dinner and talking. It was nice to have Maxine just hold me, sometimes even patting my hair. He wasn't as long as it seemed. He patiently waited for my breathing to slow, and when it did, he pulled back to look at me. America, I promise you I'll keep you here until the last possible moment. Understand that they want me to narrow the light down to three and then choose, but I swear you, I'll make it to two and keep you here until then. I won't make you leave a moment before I have to, or the moment you're ready, whichever comes first. I nodded. I know we just met, but I think you're wonderful and it bothers me to see you hurt. If he was here, I'd. Maxine shook with frustration, then sighed. I'm so sorry, America. He pulled me back in, and I rested my head on his broad shoulder. I knew Maxine would keep his promise, so I settled into perhaps the last place I ever thought I'd find genuine comfort.